I'd like to introduce Jed Asmus, who is an animal scientist, dairy nutritionist, and founder of January Innovation Incorporation. So welcome, Jed.
So when I was asked to talk today, I tried to figure out how I would explain what I do. And the best analogy I came up with was this morning leaving the house in a hurry and looked into my son's room and realized the chaos that was in there. And that's a pretty good analogy because most people can relate to that. They either were that kid or you have that kid in your house. And that's what we try to manage on commercial dairies in the commercial feed business every day. And when I saw this topic, my question to myself was, can we even, if there is a productivity response from mitigating methane, can we find it? And let's see. So with that, I wanted to start with what we do know that works out in the field. And in my career, about 20 years now feeding cows commercially, 3 products have made it to where the accountant called me at the end of the year for a dairy and said, what'd you guys do? That's BST, which is gone. Palm fats, which is C16 fat, which is probably on its way out. And the last one's propionic acid, which is a very conserved mechanism. All 3 of those have very conserved mechanisms. And that's a challenge, is when you put something into a system, like a cow, and then you have thousands of cows in pens, you don't get to control where that stuff goes in most cases. Dr. Dave Beatty taught me this years ago. When we put a trial together and we try to do controlled research, we're hoping the system responds in a direction we expect so we can measure it. And in most cases, that's definitely not how it works. It's more of a balloon, and it expands in a variety of directions. And that's what happens. And right now, commercially, we're feeding 2 separate products on 4 dairies that mitigate methane, 3NO piece 1, Agoin's the other, in very different ways. And no negatives, but I can't say we've seen positives relative to production. And that's not a bad thing, because that's not what we're trying to do when we feed these products. And the dairymen are very on board with that idea as we approach it. But I'm very skeptical, and that's my job as a nutritionist, is to be their pessimist who tries to figure out where the reality comes from. So with that, some of the challenges that we have is, we've talked about this from a microbiologist perspective, and I am not one, but I do know this: no 2 rumens are the same. They vary slightly, they vary greatly. And there's some great research illustrating that when you swap rumen contents between cows, very quickly they go back. The host determines a lot of what happens in there. And then on top of that, and I have about 20 farms I manage with them on a daily basis, no 2 are the same. You can't feed the same diet into and get the same response from those cows. The pens aren't structured the same. There's some great research out of Italy from about 20 years ago showing this. They fed it on 40 dairies, 1 diet, the same ingredients, same source. It was wild, the amount of variation. So to expect a production response from a small ingredient, we're talking grams per head per day, it's gonna be really hard to find commercially. And then sadly, most significant trial responses can never be found in the field. We don't have the sensitivity. We just lack the application of the tools, the ability to apply them as consistently, and the tools to measure them that consistently. So back to my first slide, when we feed palmitic acid as a reference point, we're feeding 0.4 of a pound. We'll see 2 points of butter fat, 0.2 of butter fat in the tank in 2 days. That's the only product I feed that works that fast. And so I'm hopeful there's some opportunities, but I didn't use ChatGPT. I used Gemini earlier to do this. Some back of the envelope math. The amount of methane that's possible to be reduced at a 30% reduction from a caloric perspective alone is about 1 pound of corn per cow per day. Sounds like a lot, but in most cases, the systems we have more variance than that. And so it's going to be really hard to measure these responses commercially to the dairyman. And I bring that up because if I run a go-to-market strategy with a product in this room, that's your biggest barrier. If you're trying to sell a production response to a person who's very skeptical, who's been burned for 30 or 40 years in their life by products that don't materialize on their dairy, that's a challenge. You got to make sure you have some concrete response you can measure with them. And with that, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.